Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on short notice. For those of you I've not yet met, my name is Jill Meyer. I'm a lawyer and professional development consultant and the founder of Lawyers Combating Antisemitism. If you're part of the legal community and you haven't yet subscribed to our site, I'll share the link in the chat and you can sign up there at no cost. Please note we are recording this webinar. The only part that we're going to be making available after this this session is are the presentations from our experts and not your Q&A. So I don't want anyone to have concerns about that. This brief emergency session was organized to help us process fear, grief, and trauma in the face of rising anti-Semitism, especially following the horrific shooting in DC of a young couple attending a multi-faith event at the Israeli embassy. Today, we're joined by two professionals with deep experience supporting communities through trauma and hate-fueled violence. Malka Shah is licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Florida with more than 25 years in the mental health field and 15 years in private practice. Her work as a trauma therapist began on the front lines, supporting survivors of domestic violence and later working with the Red Cross and FEMA to clinically debrief police, firefighters, and essential workers after 9/11. Since then, she has continued to specialize in PTSD and trauma recovery, both in community education and individual care. In response to October 7th, Malka co-founded the Kesher Shalom Project, which empowers Jewish communities to heal and build resilience through trauma-informed education and support. And Jody Taub is a New York-based psychotherapist with 27 years of experience in individual, couples, family, and group therapy. In addition to her clinical work with clients managing chronic illness and rare diseases, Jody is a leading voice in Jewish mental health. As program director for Kesher Shalom, she co-develops trauma-informed programs focused on Jewish identity, cultural competence, and the psychological effects of anti-Semitism. Her work also includes educating clinicians on propaganda, indoctrination, and their impacts on mental health and professional environments. Jody collaborates with multiple Jewish mental health organizations and is also part of the Jewish Social Work Consortium dedicated to advocacy, research, and advancing Jewish cultural competence in mental health practice. Both of our speakers today bring a wealth of insight and experience that we know will be supportive to our legal community during this difficult time. And with that, I would like to hand things over to Malka and Jody.
Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. Welcome, everybody. We do want to try and have as much of a sense of community. So if you feel that you are comfortable, it would be really great to turn on your cameras, because one of the things that we do as a community is we stick together as a community and we grieve as a community. We are here as professionals, but we are also here as two Jewish people who are also hurting and are also in our moment of grief. What can we say? Two Israeli diplomats were shot outside their residence in DC in what was an anti-Semitic attack. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our George Floyd moment. Right now is our George Floyd moment for the Jews. They were shot simply for being Jewish, even though we found out later one wasn't Jewish. But where is the national outreach? Where are the marches? Where are the headlines? Where are all the celebrities posting statements? So we are grieving, but we are also experiencing the betrayal at the same time. We're watching who is our allies and who is staying silent. This did not happen in a vacuum. It's been part of a larger wave of escalating anti-Semitic violence, both online and in real life. Our institutions, our schools, our synagogues, and individuals have been living under heightened security since October 7th, and for many, many before that. Since October 7th, we've been fighting two wars. I always said that there was a war in Israel and a war in the diaspora, and that one is physical and one is emotional, but the emotional war just became physical. Why this hurts is that this is not just another news story. These people are our people. And when one person is hurt for being Jewish, it hurts us all. We're only 0.02% of the population. This is not just another news story, it's re traumatizing, it's familiar, and it's terrifying. We are hyper aware of our visibility, whether it's being afraid to speak Hebrew, wearing our Magen David, our Star of David, attending a Shabbos, wearing a yarmulke outside. This attack is a reminder that being visibly Jewish can be dangerous, even in the capital of the United States. We have a collective grief, a collective exhaustion, and we're also coping with a communal trauma. Traumas come in many sizes and shapes, and Jody and I are going to get into that in a little bit, but traumas can come in many sizes and shapes. But when it builds on top of each other, sometimes that last stone is what's going to break that virtual glass. And for many of us, we thought we already hit it, and more is keep coming. And when we talk about different types of trauma, I talk about this in terms of a communal versus a collective trauma. A communal trauma is when it is targeted at an individual person. Plus, we've had this ongoing, prolonged toxic stress, one incident on top of each other. So it's obvious that we've had this sense of emotional toll and hypervigilance that's been going through us. Prolonged trauma, the response and the fear and the vigilance feels almost like we're on this roller coaster. It's like whiplash. In therapy terms, hypervigilance, intergenerational trauma, and the betrayal of the trauma are real, and they are showing up in our Jewish life. And yet our allies aren't there. Jews, especially the Jewish community in Canada and United States, we have been known to support almost every other cause. And now our pain is not being validated. We're told to be silent, and there is a tension that is growing, and this tension is becoming unsustainable. So, how are we going to sustain ourselves in a very unpredictable times? How are we going to walk through this? How are we going to support each other? So we have a couple of things that we're going to talk about in terms of how we're going to support each other. Jody is going to give us some practical advice, some practical pieces. And then we're also going to look at it from our Jewish tradition. So we have the therapy piece and our Jewish tradition that we could really bring comfort. But the most important thing is we have to stand together as a community. We are all together. And when this happens, I think one of the most horrific things is we know that this means it could have happened to any one of us. All they were doing is walking out of a Jewish museum from a Jewish event. My daughter, who's in high school, has told me that a lot of her friends who were in a different class just took a class trip and had exited the museum a mere 3 hours before the assassination. That means it could have happened 3 hours earlier. It could have happened to any one of us. And it's happening not out of anything other than they were Jewish or they thought they were Jewish. And in this case, one of the victims was actually not Jewish, but he was Israeli and he was working for the US Embassy. And the irony is that what they were working on was peace. So, what is trauma? I'm just going to give a basic definition of trauma. Trauma is any time that you feel unsafe, out of control, or overwhelmed. It's one of the most misunderstood ailments of humankind, and it is the wound of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And it is one of the most complicated things, but our very simple answer is the sense of safety is being undermined. And what that means is we as Jewish community have been in a sense of active trauma because our sense of safety has been undermined. And the three most important things that we need to do is validate, support, and find the sense of safety. So if we can't find the sense of safety, validation and support is the most important. What I'm going to do is right now is I'm going to turn it over to Jody so that she can explain a little bit about what's going on in the body and give us a few specific examples of things that we could do for ourselves in the here and the now. Thank you, Jody.
Great. Thank you, Malka. And I'm glad to be here today with all of us. And I think one of the most important components of where we are in this moment is being able to experience our pain as a community. And for so many of us, each of these events whether it's the events that just happened this week, the fatal shooting of those two young people. And yes, I saw some people raise their hands that, yes, that one of the individuals, he was Israeli, but he was Christian, and his soon-to-be fiance was Jewish and from Oklahoma. But nonetheless, they were killed for being Israeli and assumed to be Jewish. And that hits all of us. And it hits all of us in many different ways. And this moment in time, we all experience trauma in different ways, and we experience grief in different ways. We experience our individual grief for how we might feel for our children, our parents, some of our grandparents who may have been Holocaust survivors. And then, in addition to that, our peoplehood, how we feel every time an anti-Semitic incident happens, we all feel it together. So it's really important that we grieve both individually, but also as a community. So, as Malka was saying, I'm going to talk about some coping strategies that we can use and utilize, and I'm going to divide them into two different categories. One is some general coping strategies to utilize when we experience trauma and psychological symptoms as a result of feeling unsafe. And then the second component I'm going to come back to is using Jewish rituals to cope with trauma, because so much of the psychological components that are integrated that we use, such as mindfulness, really come from Jewish ritual. A lot of people don't realize that it's infusing and integrating the part of Judaism that connects us to each other and makes us feel that we have a sense of purpose in this world. And that's what we always come back to. So I'm going to talk about some strategies to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. There's two components of the nervous system when we think of a trauma response. One might be the sympathetic nervous system, is what we traditionally think of as the fight or flight, that we experience some sort of trigger an incident that makes us feel that we are in danger, at risk, and our body responds. And sometimes that may be increased heart rate. Sometimes people feel flushed. They may feel a sense of uncomfortability and energy, and sometimes that comes with racing thoughts. It could be a common narrative, such as, right now feeling, oh gosh, what's next? When's the next anti-Semitic incident that's going to happen? Or when something happens like that, where there's a fatal shooting, many of us may all of a sudden feel, wait, how do I feel more secure? How do I make sure my kids are okay going to school? Or we're going to attend Shabbat services, tonight and go to shul or temple. And is that okay? Am I going to feel a sense of hypervigilance? So we want some strategies to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the part of our nervous system that's sort of the counter to the sympathetic, and that it is the calming part. It's the part of us that when we are feeling fight or flight allows us to feel grounded and calm. As Jewish communities, we're not only facing external threats, but also this internal nervous system overload affects us. So the coping strategies I'm going to talk about are going to help shift from this chronic fight or flight into the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. So several examples of this are mindfulness and meditation techniques. And I encourage people to use those techniques to kind of ground yourself in the moment and bring yourself out of the fear and the existential threats, and sort of ground yourself in where you are. And we can use mindfulness in many ways, of saying, okay, I'm just going to take a breath right now. I'm just going to step outside. I'm just going to focus on cooking my meal tonight for Shabbat, so that you ground yourself in something that keeps you present. And by doing so, it allows our brain and that thought system to focus in on the task at hand. Breath work is also very helpful. So you can slow down your breath by counting. And especially for those of us who may feel the fluttering of a heartbeat, consciously slowing your breath can help those somatic symptoms to dissipate. creative expression is great. And you don't have to be an artist to do creative expression. It could be for you just simply cooking. A lot of people find joy in cooking or in looking up and learning about something about history or something you're interested in, something that expresses a part of you that you're interested in and allows you to be present in a moment. Physical touch. So for those of us who live with somebody, to be able to grab a hug or hold somebody's hand or pet your dog or cat, all of these things bring us closer to feeling a sense of calm. And to offer a hug to somebody, to say, hey, I'm just feeling this moment and I need some safety. Dance is another way of experiencing some creative expression, getting outside. There were many studies that occurred during the recent pandemic that showed that going outside and being able to look at nature and trees and the focus of even just walking down your street allows our brain to shift into out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic nervous system, and you're just focused on what's at hand, and it can be very calming for us. Maintaining your routines, that's really important. Having some baseline routines that you know you have to do every day, and hopefully that routine includes some sort of movement, whether it's going for a walk or exercising. Maybe it's even doing laundry, but making sure that we do our basic self-care and do not let those things go, because sometimes that can make us feel out of control. As I mentioned earlier, preparing a meal can be really therapeutic, and the nourishing aspects of cooking can be wonderful, and also can also provide some Jewish cultural traditions as well. And so I encourage all of you, if you can, maybe tonight for Shabbat, utilizing some of these traditions and lighting your candles. And maybe you cook, maybe you don't have time to cook a Shabbat meal if you haven't thought about it, but maybe just, doing a brachot Adonai over the bread and some wine. Connecting with friends and family. It's so important that this is what I call community care. So we've got self-care, but also community care, and making sure you connect with loved ones. And that could be through a phone call, through a text message, maintaining those connections and conversations and opening up those discussions with our Jewish community, but also outside of our Jewish community. I know that many of us have felt betrayed by people we thought were our allies, but I think it's important to remember that more times than not, our non-Jewish friends or family members, sometimes they just don't understand this moment, and you have to remind them. And so it may be, that you just say, hey, by the way, I'm having a really hard time. Can I explain a little bit, if they're open to what this is and sharing this moment? And then other joyful distractions, doing something you love. Could be listening to music, a favorite podcast, just something to kind of get you out of the moment. Because I know many of us are on our constant WhatsApp and news feeds and, seeing all the anti-Semitic incidents that occur on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes we just need to take some space from the social media. I often tell people to journal. It's helpful to write down and just take a moment for yourself for some reflection and think about your thoughts, and maybe you come back to it. Maybe you share it with someone else, but it also can be helpful. And lastly, just remember that these strategies are not one size fits all. So you can pick and choose what works for you, but they don't erase our fear. But what they do is they remind our body, our spirits, and our traditions that we hold wisdom, and that when we engage intentionally, we choose resilience. And so through that, I'm going to hand it over to Malka, and she's going to infuse a little bit of our Jewish knowledge.
Thank you so much, Jody. I want to just give you a little bit of pieces of our Jewish tradition, because one of the things that Kesher Shalom, by the way, Kesher means connections and Shalom means peace. One of the things that we've discovered as therapists and as very well educated Jewish members of this community, who both of us have been involved in different denominations of Judaism, is the integration between therapy tools and what is really in our tradition. So we have something in Ethics of Our Fathers and Pirkei Avot. It says, Al tiferish min hatzibor. Do not separate yourself from the community. This is one of the greatest wisdoms because when we talk about healing, healing does not happen in a vacuum. Healing happens when we have support. So to be Jewish is to be connected to each other and it's also to be connected to our history so that we have a future. We do not heal in isolation. And this is a really amazing thing because this was written well before modern day psychology. In the Talmud, in the Gemara, it says, Kol Yisrael Avraham Zeh Bazeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. When Jews are targeted, all of us feel it, and we all carry this collective responsibility, but we have this collective resilience. And when it feels really almost impossible, and when the moment feels heavy, because there's not one of us that since October 7th have not felt the heaviness or the exhaustion or the frustration or rage of the moment. We have to remember that we're not just carrying intergenerational trauma, we're carrying intergenerational resilience. And the fact that you're here with us today is proof that your ancestors chose to preserve this legacy, and it's like a treasure. And I want you to really just appreciate this treasure. We have also in our tradition this idea of pekuach nefesh, protecting life overrides everything. And so when we talk about protecting life, it's not just our physical life, it's our emotional life. And if you are really experiencing any of these symptoms for a prolonged amount of time, it takes a lot of courage and strength to reach out for help, but it is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. I want to just remind anybody that all of the factors that we normally have, and we have a handout, I think Jill can send it out after, of what to look for in ourselves and others. It's all about duration, frequency, and intensity. So all of us might have a little bit of hypervigilance, a little bit of anxiety, but are those factors taking over our ability in our daily lives, our interpersonal relationships, our ability to work or go to school? If we look at that, then maybe it's okay to just consult with a professional. It's a sign of strength, and we have a lot of services that we have for you. Zachor is that concept of remembering, not just memory for its own sake, but to transfer the memory into moral clarity. Resilience in Judaism isn't just about pretending we're okay. Resilience doesn't mean that we're strong all the time, but it means that we put one step forward in front of us, even when we don't feel like we're strong. It's about showing up anyways and insisting that we matter. Um, so when we talk about our allies and our leaders, we need to really be clear. Don't soften it and say all anti-hate or all this. Say the name, anti-Semitism. Don't wait for it to escalate. We cannot be quiet. We have to have our voices because silence is compliance. We are not okay, but we're not going anywhere. We don't need to be victims. We just need to be heard. So I'm asking you to not be indifferent, but to just show up. Anti-Semitism doesn't just start with the bullets that we saw in DC. It starts with ideas. It starts in the classrooms, on social media, and in our hashtags. And it starts with people who are taught to dehumanize, to blame, and to divide. And the indoctrination is unfortunately working. When this indoctrination is left unchecked, it turns into violence, into silence, and the normalization of hate. If we want this to stop, we have to speak up. We have to get educated, understand how this is working, and have the words to be able to speak up. The fight about anti-Semitism isn't just about our safety and security. It's about truth. It's our story, and it's about teaching the next generation how to see Jews as fully human. Dara Horn always says people love dead Jews. Don't let that be right. Let them love or know who we are as Jews. We need to teach them. So we are not okay, but we are awake and we're asking you to wake up. And we also are asking you to take care of yourself. And the last thing I want to leave off with is v'ahavta l'recha v'kamocha. To love your neighbor as yourself means we need to take care of ourselves. We are obligated in self-care. We are obligated to work on ourselves emotionally and physically. I'm going to have Jody just give one or two ideas that we could just very quickly, because we also want to be able to take some questions of how we can take some of these ideas of Judaism and really put them into the physical reality of action. Because we could take these ideas, but unless we take action, and what I'm going to ask of every one of you that's with us today is take any one thing that we talked about tonight. Take any one thing and put it into action. I am going to light my Shabbos candles tonight at sunlight, and I am going to think about these two, and I am going to say a prayer for them. That is going to be my action. But because that's my action, it might not be right for you. It might be right for somebody else. And thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to let Jody speak for a minute, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you, Malka. So you led into one of my talking points, which is community care through healing connection. And I know at this moment in time right now, so many people want to feel connected to Judaism, and we need to make sure that it's not just about the anti-Semitism, but it's actually about what makes us beautiful as a peoplehood, and that is all those traditions that we have. And sometimes, no matter what your background is, no matter what your day-to-day looks like, there's always small ways that you can infuse Judaism in and bring meaning into your life. So that might be a small shared ritual. And as I mentioned before, it might be tonight you decide, you know what, I'm going to start lighting the candles on Friday. I'm going to start saying the hamotzi. I'm going to say, Baruch atah Adonai Borei Pri Hagafen, and have some wine, and remember that I'm going to take this moment on Friday to remember the difficult things that happen, but also to be thankful and to say those blessings and appreciate those things. I also encourage people to find a way to connect to some Jewish community if you haven't been able to do so. So it doesn't mean, you could join a synagogue or decide that you're going to start to attend programming, but there's ways in which you can get involved by taking programs or classes online, learn about something about our history to get you connected to other Jewish people, because that's what this is all about. And there's other things that we can do, and just reminders of tzedakah. So getting involved, and that might be a food share, helping a neighbor, and last but not least, finding spaces for grief and our emotional responses, and talking about our Judaism, making sure that on a day-to-day basis, we bring in those things. We bring in those moments of Judaism. And maybe you take a pause for yourself and you say, okay, how do I want to infuse my Jewish life? This might be through advocacy. You might decide, all right, I really want to get involved in a Jewish organization. I might want to help college kids on campus, or I would like to, work in grief and trauma, whatever that is. But to find a way that we use the tenets of Judaism to remind ourselves of the importance and the beauty of it. And in the process of doing this, which is the community care, we're also building relationships with people that we know. And it may be through these processes, you might find that you get connected to other like-minded people. I've been lucky. Malka and I met through our therapeutic alliances, and we became friends and peers. And so there's always ways to get involved, no matter what stage in life you are, to add your Judaism into your life. And lastly, what I want to say is to be proud of that. As you see, I'm wearing my Magen David. And I recently had non-Jewish friends say to me, oh, wait, you started wearing, your Jewish star more frequently. I said, yes, because I'm really proud of it. And it's gotten us to talking about, current events and what's happening, and for them to have a better sense of me as a Jewish person. And that allows connection. So there's always room for that. And we're thankful that you came here today, because this is another process of connecting with other Jews through strength and purpose to form resilience.
That was so beautiful and a great way to end. And I want to make sure we have time for questions. And I just want to let everyone know that there's a lot of resources on the Kesher Shalom website. So please write down www.keshershalom, just like behind us.com. There's a lot of resources on my personal website, malkashaw.com and jodytaub.com. There's 3 websites with a lot of resources out there. And then what is Jessica Cook's website? She has a lot of good stuff on her website, Jody. Do you remember the name of it? Door to Door.
Door to door. Yes.
It's also doorvador.com. It has a lot of good resources. So we have all these different websites and tons of resources, and you may reach out to us. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of resources that we post because we want to be here for the community. Okay, I know we're going to get, whoever can't stay, we totally understand. And we want to thank anybody who's not Jewish specifically for being our allies and being here to support us.